All right, my name is Keith Alcorn, and I am here in La Madeleine for an interview.
It's a good setup. I like that. How was the soup, by the way?
It's delicious. Their French onion soup, great.
Well, let's talk about this quirky little fun documentary you guys are editing together. Tell us a little bit about where the idea to do this. I know you guys are all Irving guys. Was this kind of a...
Well, yeah, one of the funny stories about this whole thing is that we started finding out that we've been talking about this documentary for 4 or 5 years. And Jimmy Papa, who's the producer on the film, working with me on the film, he is an Irving High School alum. And so am I. And the co-writer, co-director on it is also an Irving High School alum, and so is the investor, and so is there's our audio engineer is an Irving High School guy, and I'm like, how is this happening? That's why we called the company Black and Gold Films, because that was our school colors, the Irving Tigers, and it was just this weird, funny coincidence that. We were all from there, and we've been talking about this film for about 4 or 5 years, and I've kind of been following, what Jimmy had done. Growing up, I was a huge Von Erich fan, hated the Freebirds, loved to hate them. It's one of those things where great rivalry, one of the best in wrestling to me, and so it was. I've never done a documentary before, but because most of my work has been in animation. But I thought, gosh, if I'm ever going to do a documentary, this would be it, because I love professional wrestling from that era. I'm not, as much a huge fan of it today, but, early 80s through the 90s, I love professional wrestling. And so when we had the opportunity to interview any of these guys like Johnny Mantell or Iceman King Parsons or David Manning, I suddenly became like, 15 years old again, and I had an opportunity as years and years ago to meet Kerry Von Erich and meet Kevin, and so this was just a huge part of my growing up, and so when this opportunity came along, I jumped on it, because I thought, this is perfect for me. If I'm ever going to do a documentary, it would have to be something, kind of silly like this, where, and the nice thing is we're all kind of like-minded. And I've watched a lot of wrestling documentaries for some reason, like Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret the Hitman Hart, certain guys that are just my favorites. And I watch, how their stories are told, and I thought, that's great for them, because, they were never really what I would consider out over the top characters. They kind of are, but they're not. I just thought the Freebirds were like at another level in terms of just their outrageousness.
Yeah.
And the way they would play to the crowd, and the hatred that they had for the Von Erichs and vice versa. It was just like, oh my gosh. And the fans, I don't think they knew when to turn it off sometimes, because we used to go to the Sportatorium all the time, all my animation buddies. And we'd go down to the Sportatorium, and we'd sit there, and we were shouting, having a great time. Everyone else took it very serious. I even got called down one time. A guy sitting next to me said, you need to calm down, because I think you're making my wife mad. And I'm like, wow, really? So she's taken this all pretty seriously, and she was just stoic. She looked like she was a Native American, and she was like Sitting Bull. She just stared right at the screen, never looked at me, never said anything to me, but her husband said, you guys need to quit being so rowdy and so silly. I thought that's what wrestling was, it's just silly, goofy stuff, big soap opera. But so, we'd go all the time and have a great time. And I was even there the night that they announced David Von Erich's death.
Oh.
And which was, oddly enough, a huge downer. No, it really was a huge downer because, we're sitting there and we're like, well, now what do we do? Well, I mean, we came here to have a great time and everyone's crying, and I guess we should just go home. I mean, it was so sad. And then, that just started a string of that tragedy.
Yeah.
And, but still, there was always, we try to find the fun in it. And, for a long time, for the 80s and even, through the mid to late 80s, it was a lot of fun. And so, that's a long-winded way of telling you kind of why I got into this. It was I think it just was destiny. I had to do this film.
Well, I've been so excited to talk to you. I mean, my background is sports broadcasting, and we were under Bill Mercer, who used to call.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I mean, he was the voice of wrestling.
The greatest.
I mean, so we used to listen to his old tapes in class, and that was, I mean, the whole stories of behind-the-scenes Von Erichs, and, I mean, like you said, that whole legacy, I mean, that's a couple of movies on its own.
Oh, yeah.
What made you stick with this particular story? What pulled you out of this? Like, how did you guys hone in on Jimmy's, writing this song and this whole, how did that come about? Because there is so much going on in the 80s here. I mean, Texas was a hub of wrestling.
Oh, I mean, I don't think there was anything bigger than the Von Erichs and Freebirds in the 80s. I think Fritz Von Erich and the promotion he had created here at the Sportatorium, it was enormous. I mean, they talk about how even in the Middle East that the entire Middle East would just shut down to watch professional wrestling, and it was just the only time there was peace, I guess. I don't know, but it was so amazing the impact they had, and I don't think they even knew it. I think they thought, well, we're just doing this locally, but it was going all over the place, and they were they're just enormous celebrities all over. And but I like I said, I went to school with Jimmy. I'm a little bit older than he is, but he and I just started talking about his song, which of course I remembered. Oh, of course, Badstreet, yeah. And then, oddly enough, this is the 30th anniversary of that song and music video. So I said, we have to do this. We have to celebrate this. I mean, this is like a big deal. This is the song that really kind of started the rock and wrestling genre. And so, let's make this. And, I'm thinking, let's make it like a TV hour, which is like 45 minutes. And, tell this story, from how you met, and even before, like, why did you get into this? And it even talks about Jimmy's dad at the beginning. His dad was a world famous drummer. I mean, Jimmy's a drummer. His dad was like rated in the top 10 drummers of that era. I mean,
wow.
It's covered in the documentary, but he was the drummer for Duke Ellington for a while. He toured with Artie Shaw. I mean, there's all these amazing things his dad did. And so it just kind of stands to reason that, well, Jimmy would be a drummer. And, Jimmy, of course, kept that going. And, through this weird accident, he met the Freebirds, and they hit it off right away and started talking about, hey, let's do a record and let's do a music video and let me handle all your promotion. And they're like, okay, and hey, can you drive us to our show? And because they didn't, it was so weird, they didn't have a car for a while, and so he would drive them to Gilmer, Texas, or wherever they were going, and they'd play, at some football stadium in Gilmer, Texas, and drive them back, and so it's all that. And then, at one point, Michael Hayes and Jimmy were actually roommates, and which that had to be
the wild nights, right?
Yeah, that had to be crazy. But then, just all the things they went through together, making the record, the video becomes this huge kind of phenomenon, and they sold like 55,000 copies of it, and it was all through mail order. It wasn't like, music, even back then, like it was on the Billboard charts and some label. It was an independent label. I mean, if you wanted this song, you had to tear out the coupon and send a check, and it was like, nobody did that back then. You went to the record store and bought your records. But, it's just amazing that they do this album together, and just all their stories. I mean, all the weird, crazy stuff that went on. We couldn't tell everything. I mean, some of it we wouldn't want to tell, but some of it, there's just not enough time.
Yeah.
Because, like I touched on earlier, once Jimmy gets going, you start editing in your mind, like, okay, I'm going to take all this out. But, they're really funny, fascinating stories.
What story made you think, okay, there's a little bit more than just an hour TV show?
Well, it's actually a story that we didn't use in the film because... do you remember Sunshine?
Yeah.
The rest of the ballet?
Yeah.
Well, Jimmy dated her, and they had some interesting relationship issues. And needless to say, I think she was quite a bit tougher than Jimmy. And, I don't know, he did things to irritate her, and she would show him. And I would just laugh at some of these stories he was telling, about her, just kind of, beating the crap out of him. And, and then it's like, well, we probably don't want to tell this because, she's living in Tampa, and, I don't want to make anybody look bad. And, so we ended up cutting it out. Of course, now it's on this, but I don't know what I'm doing. But I mean, it was a funny story, and there were so many funny Freebird stories about how they lived. Like, you think the Freebirds, well, they had to be rich. They're the fabulous Freebirds. I mean, they're not the ordinary Freebirds. And so, he's telling all these stories about going over and eating with them. He goes over there, and there's a long extension cord hanging from their upstairs neighbor down to their apartment because they had no power because they didn't pay their bill. I'm like, what? How are these guys not paying their bills? And then, you go in there and you eat with them, and they've got this old shag carpet that has never known the touch of a vacuum cleaner. And they're dropping food on the floor like buttered, corn, ears of corn, and picking it up and eating it with, all the hair and paper clips and toenails on it. And it's like, oh my gosh, these guys are awesome. These are the greatest guys. And, a lot of, Jimmy would say, they were nice guys, great guys. He loved them. But there was a lot of them in their characters. I mean, they were sometimes crazy, rowdy Freebirds, and he would tell me some stories, and I thought, gosh, these are so great. We got to do something with them. And so there's like 3 sections in this film that are called Story Time with Jimmy. And so he gets on there and he's telling these stories, and some of them are, like I said, the first one is just about him meeting the Freebirds. The second one is how he almost got shot by one of the Freebirds in the face, and then there was an incident at the Sportatorium where Michael Hayes was hit by a guitar by Buddy Roberts. It was kind of like Michael Hayes is going to turn face. He's making friends with the Von Erichs, and Jimmy tells this hilarious story about, and he still has the guitar, the broken guitar that hit Michael on the head and laid him out for 5.5 minutes. He's laying unconscious, and this isn't faking it. He's laying there, and he's just covered in blood. And it's just the craziest stuff. I mean, it's like, who lives like this? And it's professional wrestling. It's the show.
Can you talk about the tone of this documentary? Like what you guys are trying to capture? Like a little Spinal Tap? I mean, would that be?
Well, I mean, it is a little, because of my background, and I just have a hard time. I love watching serious things. I have a hard time being real serious unless it's an emergency or something. But like I've set myself on fire or something. But wrestling to me is just fun. I mean, it's just one of those things in life that are just fun. You go, you yell, you scream, you have a great time, and then you go home. And so for me, I have a hard time taking wrestling super seriously. And I have a hard time taking Jimmy real seriously. He's a nice guy. I really think a lot of him, but it's just hard to take a lot of this stuff seriously. And so I thought, I don't want to make a documentary that's just like all the other documentaries I've seen. And so my partner Steve and I, we just set out to make a documentary that's just kind of fun. I mean, there's times where we'll stop down and we'll do something, divert into something else, then come back, and we're always telling the story, but we'll take kind of fun stops along the way. And oddly enough, though, everything in it's true. I mean, there's nothing in it that, unless Jimmy's not telling me the truth, there's nothing in it that is not true. I mean, it's all, I've either seen it, experienced it, or, read it, or Jimmy confirmed it, and I've heard it from other people. It's like, well, yeah, this is how it happened. And, but it just kind of takes a little bit more of a tongue-in-cheek, kind of, we're having fun with this. And, I've always felt like if it's fun to work on, it's fun to watch. And so, hopefully that carries over. I mean, people can watch it at the end of it. If they had fun and they laughed, a couple of times, maybe they'll watch it again, or hopefully they'll buy it. But that's really the tone that we took with it. We just had a great time with it. There's some animated stuff, and there's even stuff that we ended up cutting out that we would do reenactments of certain events with puppets. But it was I think. They thought, well, this is just too silly. I'm like, oh, okay. And we just edited it out. I liked it, but it's, we're just trying to have fun and tell this story and celebrate this event, and hopefully people watching it will have fun too.
Well, I can't let you gloss over that there is animation as well. And can you talk about adding that? I mean, we know you so much for the animation side of things, and Steve as well. Like, how much is in the film? Like, is there the title sequences animated?
Well, the opening titles are animated. I mean, there's a lot of. It's not so much character animation, which I'm more involved in, but it's just a lot of After Effects work, a lot of graphics, a lot of things, and then if there's opportunities to do some fun things with animation. Then we try to go to that every time.
Is this opening doors? Like, do you want to do more documentaries?
Actually, I would really enjoy it if I don't know. Like I said, most of the documentaries I've seen are relatively serious. They cover something serious or something that's not as jokey as I've approached it. So I don't know how many opportunities I'll have. Somebody will go, yeah, visually it's nice, but don't let him write anything, because that's, I just, I love doing it. I just don't know how many people will go, that's our guy. We want the silly guy that's going to make fun of our topic. They'll get the Ken Burns kind of guy and handle it a little more seriously. But it's still fun, and I've always found that people enjoy laughing. So hopefully they'll enjoy this film and find something funny in it, and also learn something about how this happened and how unlikely this was to happen, but it did anyway.
I'm kind of, to wrap things up, I'm curious, 15-year-old self you when you're interviewing, basically guys you grew up loving.
Mm-hmm.
What was the one story that you were just so giddy to hear?
Well, I mean, usually the best stories are the ones they ask me not to retell. It's the stuff like, well, turn the cameras off and I'll tell you about this. And great stuff, but of course you can't. I mean, because it ruin their careers. But I just it's so weird because sitting there just like this and talking to Iceman King Parsons, and we're interviewing him by the lake, by his house, and shooting the lake behind him, and he's just talking about how he got started, how he met Michael Hayes, what he thought of the Freebirds, his first experience at the Sportatorium, and he's just going. It's so weird because you think that part of your life is over, but then you get to relive it all over again, and it's so much fun to go back and do that and be a kid again with these guys. I mean, these guys are my age, but I mean, Iceman King Parsons looks great, and Johnny Mantell looks like he could still wrestle, and then these are tough guys, and it's just so cool to meet them, and David Manning, and I mean, to find out what nice guys they are. I mean, there's not a specific story that. I guess one of my favorite David Manning stories is how and it's in the documentary, but he talks about how he was a wrestling coach for kids, and he's taking all these kids and he's teaching them how to wrestle, some of the things, because he was a wrestler, a real college wrestler, and but he's teaching this one kid how to wrestle, and a week or two goes by and he gets a phone call from Fritz von Erich. He's like, wow, why is Fritz von Erich calling me? And it turns out one of the kids he was working with was it was Kerry von Erich, and he was teaching him how to wrestle, so he kind of became their wrestling coach.
Wow.
And it was just so funny to see how that started. It's like, I mean, just by accident, he becomes their wrestling coach, then becomes, he's a guy that, works in the back, and then he becomes a wrestler. He becomes, a referee. He was the youngest referee ever, at that time. And because most of the guys were like Bronco Lubitsch and those guys, older, I guess, ex-wrestlers and stuff like that. But I mean, just to find out what nice guys these are, and that you get so caught up in the story, and that, well, this is a soap opera. They even admit this is a soap opera. But when you meet them and you see how nice they are, you go, oh yeah, that's right. This is they're not that guy. They're really just this guy that I'm talking to. They're just these nice guys. And like Iceman was such a sweet guy, and telling all his stories and how he got started, and how he told so many stories, and we couldn't use them all, but just how he got started, and his back. He was a wrestler in college, and so was Johnny Mantell. I mean, all these guys. It's funny how a lot of the guys that were really top-notch guys that maybe didn't pop as high as some of these other guys like Hulk Hogan or somebody like. They were real wrestlers. I'll tell you a story that was one of my favorite stories, because I love Bret the Hitman Hart. He's one of my favorite wrestlers.
It's my favorite too.
Yeah, and Johnny Mantell wrestled him, and Johnny Mantell was with the WWF for a while, and he said that. He went backstage, and they were, saying, okay, this is the one that's going to go down. It's a tag team between Jim the Anvil Neidhart and Bret the Hitman Hart against Johnny Mantell and Murray the accountant, or whoever his partner was. And so they said, okay, well, this is going to happen, and Bret's going to do this to you, and he's going to pin you in about 20 seconds. And Johnny just went, wait, what? And he said, Bret grabbed his leg and said, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. And because Johnny was a very proud man, he said, look, even today, I'm not going to let anybody pin me in 20 seconds. And So Brett said, look, we'll do this, you'll hit me, I'll go over here, I'll knock you over the rope, we'll go around for a couple, 3 minutes, and then you tag in your partner, we'll pin him. And I mean, Johnny Mantell thought Brett was great. He was just such a nice guy to do that. And that's what they did. I mean, he said, no, and Brett actually got reprimanded for that, he said, for going off script and kind of doing his own thing. And but I just thought that was a great story that, well, here's a really nice guy. And I do think he's a nice guy anyway. But just when you get confirmation like that, it's like, oh, well, cool. You like to find out that the guys you watched, are really nice guys instead of big jerks.
Yeah.
Like me.
Well, it's so sad to think. I mean, the way he kind of was put out by Michaels in the end, that was kind of the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
Where it's like
in Montreal.
Yeah, where you're screwing over a legend.
Yeah. In his hometown, you don't do that.
Yeah.
But they did.
Well, I don't want to end on that. I want to end on how much fun it is to talk with you about wrestling. Thank you.
Oh, well, thanks.
This is so much fun. I can't wait to see the film, in its completion. I guess last thing, can you give us an update? Where are you with the film?
Well, this is kind of our last week of production. We're going through and doing little tweak things. Like yesterday, we would do things like put all the stills in, and we'd leave them just static. And yesterday we went in and did all the moves on stills. And today we went in and we did a couple of things, and I had to leave and come here. But, just going through and making sure that all of our animation is getting done on time. And because Steve Barnes is doing a lot of, doing really all the animation for us. And, just trying to make sure that we hit our deadlines, because, that's one of the things I always strive to do is get it done on budget and on schedule. So,
well, I can't wait. And
well, thanks,
Keith. Thank you so much. It's
been
a pleasure.
Sure.
Awesome.